And capping off a tumultuous week for the Premier. The resignation comes amid damning reports that the government's picks for 2 patronage appointments had ties to French. Plus,
I felt it was time for me to step up and run for public office.
another member of the Ford family is entering politics. Renata Ford, wife of the late Rob Ford, now has her eyes set on Ottawa. And
I am trans non-binary, and I am so grateful to have a space to celebrate and to be myself with other folks.
it's the official kickoff for Pride Weekend. Yonge Street hosts the 10th annual Trans March. Good evening, I'm Mike Wise. We begin with some sad news. A small child was critically injured tonight after falling from a Midtown balcony. This happened around 7:40 at a building near Mount Pleasant Road and Davisville Avenue. The child was rushed to hospital. Police don't know how the child fell or even what floor the child fell from. The investigation continues at this hour. And another developing story we're following tonight, the resignation of Premier Ford's Chief of Staff, Dean French. According to the Premier's office, French, sitting there on the right, offered his resignation this afternoon. It comes amid controversy over 2 patronage appointments that had close ties to French. More on that in a moment. Chief of Staff was also criticized by former PC MPP Randy Hillier for engaging in what he said was an underhanded campaign to boot him from caucus. In a statement, Ford's office says Dean French will be returning to the private sector after a successful first year of government, as he had always planned. Now, French's resignation comes just hours after the Premier revoked 2 new trade appointments. The NDP releasing screen captures of Tyler Albrecht's social media accounts containing sexist and homophobic comments. The 26-year-old was to be Ontario's new agent general representing the province's business interests in New York City. Now, he played lacrosse with Dean French's son. The other appointee to be revoked, Taylor Shields, was to head up a similar office in London. The Globe and Mail reports she is related to French's wife. And another name close to the Premier making news today, his sister-in-law, Renata Ford, wife of his late brother, Rob Ford. As Lauren Pelly tells us, she's now running for office as a candidate for the People's Party of Canada.
I have worked and served the constituents of Etobicoke North side by side with my husband, Rob Ford, for the past 20 years in an informal, behind-the-scenes capacity.
For many people, this was their first time publicly hearing Renata Ford's voice.
With the federal government mired in scandals and with ever-escalating budget deficits, which translates into more and more taxes, wasteful spending, and a government that absolutely has no respect for the taxpayers, I felt it was time for me to step up and run for public office.
She's now the Etobicoke North candidate for the People's Party of Canada, the new right-wing party led by former Conservative Maxime Bernier.
I'm very proud that she's with us. Yes, she's approached us and our team.
Ford was a constant presence during her late husband's tumultuous time at City Hall.
Oh my goodness. Oh no.
She accompanied the former mayor on business trips and stood quietly by his side during headline-making moments over his drug and alcohol use.
I have drank alcohol in excess. I wish you to know I'm receiving support from a team of healthcare professionals.
After Rob Ford's death at the age of 46, his widow made headlines of her own. Just last year, Ford pleaded guilty to impaired driving and was sentenced to community service and 3 years probation. But even though the Ford name comes with baggage, she's not shying away from it.
I think that Rob was a great mayor. I think that's all it was.
Renata, how are you doing on the alcohol situation? Are you doing okay now?
Healthier, stronger. I have, great support, and I think a lot of people go through hard times and they come out.
Ford also faced financial struggles while pursuing a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against her brother-in-law, Premier Doug Ford, claiming she and her children were bilked out of millions. In a statement today, the Premier's office didn't mention his sister-in-law by name, only saying he wishes every candidate good luck. Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
Festivities for Pride weekend are well underway. The village is buzzing with many roads in the area shutting down for parades and parties this weekend. The big event tonight, though, was the Trans March. And our Kelda Yoon was there. She joined us now live from Church and Hayden. So, Kelda, still very lively there, as we can see in the background.
Oh yeah, extremely lively, as you can see, right behind me. Lots of people are out here in the village. They're celebrating, they're partying. I'm pretty sure this will be continuing all night. Now, I am in the middle of the village. This is where the Trans March took off at 8 o'clock this evening. Participants made their way to Allen Gardens, and a lot of them, I'm pretty sure, have since made their way back here. Now, thousands of people took part in this year's Trans March. Organizers say that it gets bigger every single year. This is the 10th year for the Trans March. And I spoke to some of the marchers before they took off, and it's clear that the trans community in Toronto, like the city itself, is extremely diverse.
8,000 strong marched down Yonge.
This is and remains for some people the only place that's safe for them to come and be themselves.
Some just recently came out as trans.
I'm here because I am trans non-binary, and I am so grateful to have a space to celebrate and to be myself.
Others have been fighting for trans rights for years.
I've been part of the movements in Toronto around trans rights, equal rights, since 1990. Times are changing. We're seeing trans people everywhere, so it's a great thing. It's, Toronto's it's more inclusive, more tolerant.
That's exactly what brought Mira Yilmaz to Canada. She arrived just 1.5 months ago from Turkey as an LGBT refugee.
This is a beautiful flag with all the colors on it.
For the first time, she is able to wave the flag freely as a trans woman.
In Turkey right now, the parades are, being stopped by the government just because of their gender or their political ideas. Also, they're getting killed. I think everyone should be able to live in peace.
But while Canada may be ahead of other countries in terms of trans rights, hate still definitely exists.
Just last week, Hamilton Pride was attacked. We got some threats that may happen here. Personally, I feel it's more important now than ever that Pride do more to step up and support the communities.
And that's what Pride Toronto will be doing all weekend long, supporting and celebrating the community. And lots of events, a jam-packed weekend. Tomorrow there's the Dyke March in the afternoon. In the morning there's the Pride and Remembrance Run. And then in the evening, Saturday evening, there will be a drag ball on the Pride main stage. And of course, all this culminates on Sunday with the Pride Parade in the afternoon. I'll send it back to you, Mike.
Thanks, Kelda. Great night for people to be out tonight, and a great weekend for the festivities as well. And remember, if you are coming downtown for Pride events this weekend, best leave your car at home. There are a lot of road closures, and if you are driving, plan ahead. You can find a full list of closures on our website. Just go to cbc.ca/Toronto. And the City of Toronto hosted a sunrise ceremony at Nathan Phillips Square today. It's part of the annual celebration of National Indigenous Peoples Day, and it included the lighting of a sacred fire, drumming, and prayers of thanks. Mayor John Tory was at the event, as well as Indigenous leaders, city officials, and members of the public. Colette Kennedy's here with her first look at the forecast. What a great day for weather-wise, especially if it's going to be the longest day of the year, at least in terms of sunshine.
Yeah, exactly right. We made it. We made it to summer. And, when it comes, this is what it means. It just means we're at the solstice. And as Mike says, longest day of the year in terms of daylight. So it started today at 11:54. The sun reaches its highest point north of the equator. So we get kind of the best sun angle. That's why it's the longest day of the year. And how long? 15 hours, 26 minutes, and 31 seconds of daylight. And just to compare, the winter solstice, when the sun is north or south of the equator, 6.5 hours shorter in terms of the daylight we see there. Well, we've got lots of daylight and sunlight for tomorrow as well. With high pressure in place, it's what we experience today. We have the same thing as we go into the weekend. So for Saturday, it's looking good as well. Overnight tonight, then with mostly clear skies, 13 for the low. Tomorrow afternoon, I think we just might get to 25 degrees, although the winds will still be coming from a northerly direction. Sunday, of course, Pride Parade, so many things going on through the weekend. I'll have the complete forecast and our next chance of rain coming up, Mike.
Okay, thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
Toronto Police released details today of their investigation into last summer's deadly shooting on the Danforth. 18-year-old Reese Fallon and 10-year-old Juliana Coates were killed in that attack. Others were wounded when Faisal Hussein opened fire into busy cafes and restaurants. As Ali Chasson tells us, we're still no closer to knowing why he did it.
Although we've collected all of the evidence that was available to us for this crime, a crime where the shooter died at the scene, we may never know the answer to why.
Police reveal the findings of their 11-month-long investigation, chronicling Faisal Hussein's long history of mental health issues and psychiatric assessments dating back to 1996, when he would have been 7 years old.
A risk assessment completed in the time frame concluded that he had a high to medium risk for violence.
At school, he self-harmed. One time he was placed in psychiatric hold for cutting his face with a razor. Teachers reportedly noticed his fascination with violence, and they were concerned because of threats he would make around staff and students.
In June 2010, he was diagnosed as having antisocial personality disorder.
By the time Faisal was an adult, he would decline getting help.
When you look at the length of time in which it was identified that there were mental health issues, you do see some gaps and breakdowns. You see people trying to make the efforts, but I can't speak to what or where the failure points were, but it is very clear that mental health played a very critical role.
With releasing this report, the chief hopes for more discussion on improving the mental health system, and that was echoed in Greektown today.
We don't make enough effort to help them and get them off the streets and rehab them or do whatever the hell you have to do so that those things don't happen, right?
Next month marks the 1-year anniversary of the shooting. A lot of people in the neighborhood are still traumatized.
I heard all the shots from my bed window. I saw people run up and down the streets. Whenever helicopters fly by, we get a little bit nervous. No one wants their neighborhood to be remembered for such sadness.
Is there ever going to be any closure, do you think?
You know what the problem, in my opinion, is with closure? Is that by the time you get closure, something else happens. So it's kind of become, I hate to say it, a bit of a routine. If it wasn't the Yonge Street, it's Danforth. Then it's the parade.
There definitely isn't much closure for the victims' families. The case isn't even closed.
No investigation closes. If new information comes to light, if people come forward and say, oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, then we revisit everything. At this hour, at this moment, at this day, there is nothing in our possession to suggest that anyone else aided, assisted, or abetted Mr. Hussein on the events that happened on that day.
Ali Chasson, CBC News, Toronto.
The New York Knicks select R.J. Barrett from Toronto and Duke University.
The NBA drafted not one, not two, but 6 Canadians last night. After the break, Greg Ross takes us through that record-breaking draft. And after this next video, perhaps Greg will be part of the draft in 2020.
This is from way beyond half court here. Okay.
How do you feel about that shot?
I just want to give it 110%. I came out here, gave it my all. I don't know.
R.J. Barrett is heading from Mississauga's Square One to New York's Madison Square Gardens. The Knicks picked him 3rd overall in last night's NBA draft. He was one of 6 Canadians selected. That's actually the most players ever picked from outside the United States in a single NBA draft. Greg Ross tells us about some of the others.
That was the moment Mariel Shayok's dream came to fruition.
It's a surreal moment, obviously, for me and my family. It was a great night last night, just being with my closest friends and family and enjoying that moment.
Shayok watched the NBA draft with his family in Ottawa. He had no guarantees he would be picked. Today, he boarded a plane to Philadelphia after being drafted 54th overall by the 76ers.
It's something I've been obviously dreaming about since I was a kid. And coming from the place I came from, a lot of kids dream and few make it a reality.
Shayok was one of 6 Canadians selected in last night's draft, the most Canadians ever selected into the NBA in the same year. Toronto's R.J. Barrett led the way, selected 3rd overall. He shared this emotional moment with his father, Rowan Barrett, a former player on the Canadian national team.
You have to be proud, very proud. I'm proud of your son.
These moments are inspiring the next generation.
I hope I get to that stage in basketball.
So what are you going to do to get there?
Practice more, maybe, join a league or something.
It's exactly the kind of thing Elias Spate can help with. He runs a company called North Pole Hoops, and for the last decade, they've been helping Canadians get noticed south of the border.
I'm talking hundreds of coaches from the U.S. are now coming into Canada on a yearly basis.
So much so, he says there has never been a better time for Canadians in basketball.
There's going to be a lot of hours to chase these guys that you're seeing like RJ.
Sabate says he's already working with the next crop of Canadians for next year's draft. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Oh, beautiful, hot and sunny day in the city. The perfect way to kick off Pride weekend, and it looks like we're going to be seeing a lot more of that sun. Colette is your full forecast coming up.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
The Blue Jays in Boston tonight. Toronto off to a good start. Top of the fourth, bases loaded. 2 out for Freddie Galvis. He hits one through the infield. That goes on to score 2 runs. Not bad. Top of the third, runner on first for Randall Grichuk. He clobbers one right over the Green Monster. That puts the Jays up 4-0 at this point, but they'd squander that lead. The game would head to extra innings once the Red Sox tied up. Boston would go on to win this one 7-5. Colette is back now with her extended forecast. What a great weekend we've got in store.
Oh, we're so lucky for a change, right? Our first weekend of summer, and here we go. Looking like some beautiful conditions. I'm jumping ahead, so this is the forecast for Sunday. Now, the Pride Parade, 2 p.m. in terms of the kickoff, but I know you want to get a place, get your position, that kind of thing. So just giving you an idea throughout the day what we're looking at. So mostly sunny, 9 a.m., about 17 degrees, northwesterly breeze. That turns around towards the south to southwest as the day wears on. By 1 p.m., 22 degrees. There will be a little bit of humidity, so hitting a high around 27 on Sunday. It's going to feel like at least 28, maybe 29 to 30. So you can add a couple of degrees in terms of what to anticipate. So we do have another dry day ahead. Backing up now back to today and the almanac for this date in history, and just kind of looking at our average highs for this time of year, almost 25 degrees, our average low around 12.7 degrees. So this ridge of high pressure that's moving in, sometimes they kind of get sandwiched in between two systems, don't hang out too long or get sort of squeezed, and we only get one day. It's been hard to string together a few good days. Finally, we're doing that because this was a very broad ridge, a very big dome, and as it moves through, it's moving through rather slowly, and so it protects us not only through the day Saturday, it actually protects us from wet conditions into Sunday as well. Late Sunday, we'll see it starting to break down, but not really. It's still over top of the GTA, but some clouds starting to come back into southwestern Ontario by Sunday, and then it's really Sunday night. We'll start to see some showers beginning to develop. Overnight tonight, though, mostly clear skies, 10 to 12 degrees for your overnight lows. Looks like 11 degrees for you here in Windsor, and 24 degrees with mostly sunny skies, the high for tomorrow afternoon. Slightly milder here towards the GTA. Overnight tonight, look at your lows. Hamilton 14, St. Catharines as well, and tomorrow afternoon, climbing to about 25 degrees with all of that sunshine. Again, the winds, though, still from a northerly direction, so depending where you are, if you're in the shade, maybe it feels a little cool. It's a good day. It's 25 Saturday, 27 Sunday with sunshine, and then the temperatures just dip a tiny bit into Monday, but humidity building, that increases our chances for some instability and some showers and thunderstorms as we go into the beginning of next week. But let's just enjoy this weekend, Mike.
Worry about next week. Let's just, as you say, enjoy the weekend.
Sounds great.
Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
Lance, Jesse, Ham, Buzz, Bo, Rex, Potato Head.
Hey, watch it, buddy.
Let's go save a spork.
Well, nearly a quarter century after the original Toy Story 4 hits theaters today, the whole gang is back with some new friends. Up next, our Eli Glasner has his review. If, like me, you're a fan of the Toy Story trilogy, you may be wondering why Pixar felt the need to make a fourth installment in the computer-animated franchise. Well, Sheriff Woody and Buzz Lightyear are back with some new pals 24 years after Toy Story first hit theaters. Is it worth another trip to the toy chest? Eli Glasner has his review.
When we first catch up with Woody and friends, they're now part of Little Bonnie's collection, and Woody's still adjusting to not being her favorite. Then Bonnie comes home from kindergarten with a new toy, a sentient spork named Forky.
Woody? Why am I alive? You are a toy. You belong to Bonnie. These are your friends.
Woody, I have a question. Well, actually not just one. I have all the questions.
And Forky just wants to return to the trash where he thinks he belongs. But when Woody and Forky get separated, the toy gang find themselves at a carnival trying to free Forky from the clutches of Gabby Gabby and her army of creepy dummies. Yeah, they really are creepy. And dummies. Now, I wasn't a big fan of Toy Story 3, but the mix of new faces is part of what brought me back on board. There's Key and Peele as Ducky and Bunny, carnival plushies with attitude. And the voice of Christina Hendricks makes Gabby Gabby sad, sweet, and sinister. Plus, Bo Peep returns to show Woody there's more to life than playtime. And then there's Keanu Reeves. That's right, another film featuring Keanu. This time, he's playing Duke Kaboom, an evil Knievel like motorcycle-riding stuntman with a Canadian connection. Now, I could play you a clip from the film, but I want us to have the full Keanu experience. So this is straight from the voice booth.
Look who jumped 40 school buses and landed back into my life. Hi, Duke. Who's the cowboy? Duke, meet Woody. Woody, meet Duke Kaboom, Canada's greatest stuntman. Huh. Oh, yeah. Ha. 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 Hold on. One more. Oh, yeah.
Keanu Reeves just living his best life right now. But if this installment is anyone's, it's Woody's. What makes Toy Story 4 richer and deeper is the cowboy's existential crisis. This cartoon delves into the cosmology of the Toy Story universe. Why are we here? What's our purpose? What happens when our masters move on? Considering the kids who grew up on the series could now be in their 30s, this is the perfect way to finish the franchise. That is, if Pixar knows when to stop. 4 stars out of 5. Eli Glasner, CBC News, Toronto.
I'm going to look forward to that one. Well, one thing to look forward to tomorrow, Hoop Talks. It's featuring Danny Green and Fred Van Vliet. It's at the Queen Elizabeth Theatre tomorrow night at 6:45. You can actually watch it live on cbcsports.ca and CBC Gem. Marvell Tarouk sat down with Danny Green to chat about all things Raptors. You can catch part of that interview as well tomorrow at 6 o'clock right here on CBC Toronto. Have a great weekend. I'll see you again on Monday.